This Darius Garland game episode of Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network, is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Aligned Health Center. Aligned Health Center is the first chiropractic biophysics clinic in Northern Ohio. The team at Aligned Health Center, they're just the best. They help patients with back pain, neck pain, migraines, ADHD, digestive issues, sleep disturbance, whiplash, scoliosis, and much more. And along with chiropractic biophysics, Aligned Health Center is also the leading clinic in regenerative medicine. You may have heard of it as stem cell injections. And listen, you don't have to be an NBA player to get this done or have this treatment or to get checked out. If you have low back pain, shoulder pain, knee pain, arthritis, check out the Regenerative Medicine Clinic at Aligned Health Center. Come in for a free consultation, get some imaging done and x-rays to see how Aligned Health Center can help you. There are no multiple shots and is complete with physical therapy built into the process, so there's no downtime. And look, this gets even better. Aligned Health Center doesn't charge people for x-rays or exams. They just don't. They don't bill you later either. They let you know right up front, right away, how much it's going to cost, and they're transparent about the process. They are number one for a reason. So call Aligned Health Center today. What's it going to hurt? 440-385-7357 or visit their website at alignedhealthcenters.com to make an appointment. And also to learn more about how Aligned Health Center can help you. Again, that's alignedhealthcenters.com. Give them a call at 440-385-7357. The link and the number will be in the show notes. And if you haven't heard, Press Play is really making some noise in the podcasting world. 2 weeks ago, we launched Up Next, a show all about your favorite streaming content with hosts Kristen Aviles and Christina Walter. You'll laugh, you may cry, and you'll most certainly want to watch what they are watching. Check it out. They're brilliant. They're the best. Up Next, some really good stuff there. Last week, we launched the Ray Guy and Rhoda Show. R&R is back exclusively with the Press Play Podcast Network. Catch Michael, Ray Guy, and Kenny Rhoda as they talk all things sports and only the way that they can. They're producing content right now, so make sure to check that out. Ray Guy and Rhoda. And this week, we're launching the Dennis Maniloff Show. Excited to have D-Man on board with us. He is one of the best in the biz, and we're excited to offer his voice and insight on local and national sports. And who knows, he may even dip into trending topics and content and politics. We don't know. It's D-Man Unleashed, no holds barred. Check out the Dennis Maniloff Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. In this episode, Sam and I gush over Darius Garland and his breakout game against the Spurs. It was beautiful. We talk about the second coming of Kevin Love and how that's going to affect the team and the pressure and heat around Kobe Altman. It's a great show. Sam's just the best. I have so much fun with him, and this is just, it's a privilege and honor to be able to do this with Sam. And you guys, I think, are really going to have fun with this. Let's get to the show.
Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
That sound means it's time for a Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm your host, Chase Smith, and with me, he's the editor and writer at 48minutes.com, assistant editor at Outkick.com. He is our Cavs insider, national NBA writer, Sam Amico. Sam, Darius Garland had himself a game.
He sure did. It was, it's been a long time since the Cavs have seen a point guard performance quite like that. It was fantastic the other night in San Antonio.
You know, it was very reminiscent of the Kyrie San Antonio game, Sam. And I got to say, it was a delight.
Well, Darius did everything, a little bit everything well in terms of offense. I mean, he was obviously on fire shooting the ball, but he did a great job distributing. He looked extremely confident, just really kind of took on that leadership role that they want him to grow into, and he has been growing into, but really looked that was the first game I've seen him like, this guy looks like he has star potential. Now, I never thought that he was going to be bad. I just thought, where is this going to go? But, and it's a small sample. Let's remember, the game before that, and I think this has something to do with it. He's been struggling, kind of frustrated the last couple weeks. And I know, and then the game before that, he got ejected at the end, got thrown out, which was kind of like his frustration with everything just kind of boiling over. And I think for the first time, Chase, this was the first time that he came out, and maybe they talked to him. Maybe, maybe Rich Paul talked to him. Some coaches talked to him. I think that he had some conversations going into that game. Like, look, you can be the man on this team. You can be the elite player that we're looking for. You have to believe that. And if he does, and he continues to give performances close to that the other night in San Antonio, they're really going to have some things to think about in terms of, what this guy could be our next big guy. And I mean, that sounds shocking because it's just one game and nobody really put him in that mold, but he has that potential, I think. And we saw it all come out in one night.
It was such an incredible performance. Here's his stat line: 30 minutes, 14 of 22 from the field, 5 of 10 from the three. He had 7 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, 1 turnover, 37 points, plus minus at 20. Sam, basketball is a really funny sport where you can only have the guy. And for the past couple years, the guy for us has not been Darius Garland. It's been Colin Sexton.
Right. Sure.
Hearing you say that, Sam, it's red flags, concern, like this isn't going to end well.
Yeah, I mean, there's some issues there. I don't think, and I don't mean issues between any players, but for the Cavs,
Sam Amica reporting issues in the Cavs.
yeah. No, I mean, there are things that you still would have to figure out now. It's pretty clear. Look, I had this conversation the other day with an agent, and I said we were just kind of going back and forth, and since the day the Cavs drafted Sexton, and he's earned that, is kind of making him the face of the franchise of the post-LeBron era. And he has done most of the carrying of the torch to this point, so it's fitting. But if you are going to have Darius Garland be your number one, which if he's capable of doing that on a consistent basis, which we saw the other night, he's certainly capable of doing it for a game. If he's capable of doing that on a consistent basis, number one, is Colin Sexton okay with that? Number two, and maybe he would be. This isn't to say he's not. Maybe he will be. Number two, and I think, everybody has said this. Is he a guy that would come off the bench if the Cavs got a traditional point or shooting guard along the lines of Devin Booker or a Bradley Beal or a, Ray Allen or, the Klay Thompson, those kind of traditional shooting guards that are a little bit taller, are more spot up shooters, which Colin obviously is not. He has that element to his game, but that's not what his main strength is, getting to the basket and getting in the lane and all that. And he's a smaller shooting guard, obviously. Could you tell Colin Sexton at this point, your role is going to be like Lou Williams, and you're going to come off the bench. Now, a lot of things have to happen before you even need to bother with that conversation, but will you have that conversation, and would he be open to that? I don't know that he wouldn't be. I don't know that you need to do that.
Yeah.
But just kind of thinking ahead in the future, and this is all extremely hypothetical.
Sure.
But if Darius Garland is your number one guy, and you get a traditional shooting guard, which I suspect Darius would be even better in that situation if you put him next to a more traditional shooting guard. I think he would be better. Now, I don't know that. We don't know that for a fact. And if you do that, does Colin Sexton, the guy who you've tried to make the face of your franchise and who has been the face of the franchise, has not even tried. He's done it. Colin Sexton has done it.
And I want to touch on that.
Does he go for that?
This San Antonio game, it was almost like promise fulfilled. Like, this is what this character, this player could be, is this type of player. He's done it like this once. He's had good games, but this was like, oh, this is the Darius Garland game. This is one of those, if he continues to develop, we're going to look back and say, this is it. Put the legal notice. He was in people were talking about Darius Garland that night and the next day. But let's give credit to Colin Sexton. Sexton has been playing at a high level, Sam, consistently for 2.5 years or so. That consistent performance is hard to find. Colin's going to have a long
play
NBA.
Super hard.
Mm-hmm. He's going to have a career. He's been healthy, by and large. The knock on Garland is can he play a full season, and can we see this type of like production consistently? Obviously he's done it. He's had one like career defining game. Let's let him continue to grow. But Sam, all signs point to, at the end of the day, if we have our choice between Darius Garland and Colin Sexton, I would rather have what Garland can offer and how he impacts the team more than what Sexton can offer. And call that a overreaction.
Right. No, it doesn't need to be people look at kind of those kind of statements as, well, he's knocking Sexton, which you're not. It's who is best suited to change the direction of the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have that answer right now.
Right.
But every superstar that Darius Garland has played against, the LeBrons, the Ben Simmons, the others, that I can't think of, Bradley Beal, they have raved about Darius Garland's potential.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of games like that where he has to be, I think Darius Garland, it has to be, feel like he's the number one option. And I don't think it's like a selfish thing. I think it's, you go out there, you're the number one guy, go make it happen. And, everybody else is, Colin's our second option in your mind. In your mind, you play like you have a superstar mentality and that you have an opportunity to change the direction of the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
I know those conversations have been had with him, and maybe he's buying into it, so
he's young.
We got to see a lot more from him, obviously, but to me, if the Cavs turn some kind of corner here, it's going to be because of that game. And I don't mean wins and losses. I mean,
correct.
It's the direction of the franchise.
Yeah. And that's because of Darius Garland. I'm glad you brought up other NBA stars' opinions on the Cavs, because my boy, Isaac Okoro, had a huge endorsement last week from Jimmy Butler. I have to read it just because
sure
it's Sam. I teared up a little bit. I teared up.
I'm surprised it was only a little bit, but go ahead.
So here we go. This is Jimmy Butler talking about Okoro. The Cavs lost to the Heat in Miami last week. Jimmy Butler says, I was talking to UD at the end of the game, and we agreed the kid is going to be really good, Butler said. He plays within the game. He takes all the right shots. He gets stops and rebounds. He's always passing the ball to the open guy. I really like his game. And then a great Butler quote. Obviously, he's matched up against me, and he plays incredibly hard. He's going to be in this league for a long time. He's going to make a lot of money in this league, too. His potential is out of this world. Hopefully, he is 10 times better than I am. If he keeps working, the sky is the limit. Woo! Boy, Isaac Okoro, get yourself some, man.
Well, there's some truth to that. Butler isn't the kind of guy who's going to blow smoke up guys' behinds.
No.
He is, if anything, he's a little, I'm not worried about that guy, so,
look,
go ahead.
His blow up in Minnesota, they're not hard workers. Whatever happened in Philly, he knows what it takes to play hard, to play right. I think I feel like Isaac Okoro would fit the mold of someone playing on the Miami Heat, of someone who is like a hard worker. When I see one another team, I'm like, oh man, I wish the Cavs would get that kind of player. And I think back to some of those awesome Golden State rotations they have, where just like they were 8, 9, 10 guys deep when they were like in the championship every year. And I feel like Okoro is a player who can be definitely not 8, 9 guy rotation, but someone who plays significant playoff minutes, someone who makes a difference, and someone who is a really issue on the defensive end. And I seeing Okoro and Garland, like it's just been a really fun week to see these young guys, kind of grow into NBA players.
Yeah, Okoro, there's just, I mean, it's so hard to tell with rookies and be fair about it. Obviously, we've discussed this before. You're guarding Giannis, you're guarding LeBron, you're guarding Damian Lillard, you're guarding Bradley Beal, you're guarding Westbrook.
Butler.
I mean, yeah. And that's a tall task for the best defender in the NBA, Yeah. But here they are giving him this time to kind of be thrown into the fire. And I think that he's been making strides. Look at it's not like the guy's just stagnant. It's not like he's frustrated. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's continuing to play the right way. I think that, obviously you want to see more. And guess what? When you're 19, 20 years old, Okoro's 20, Garland's 21. Sometimes it takes you till you're about 22 to be like, wow, they're really turning the corner here. Mm-hmm. And I think he's doing a nice job. I think he's coming along slowly but surely. And I think he's answering some questions. And I think he's looking like he's going to be, at worst, an efficient pro offensively who is a good defender.
Yeah, and I'm sure hearing praise from Jimmy Buckets is going to help his confidence. And who knows outside of the public eye who's texting who and who's like offering whatever.
Right.
This is really, really encouraging that he kind of offered that up on his own. Like other players were talking about Okoro in there. Another interesting development, Sam, with this team is the reemergence of Kevin Love. Really kind of changed a little bit of the team dynamic. I was shocked. What say you about Kevin Love's return?
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at places like Phoenix that has a 35-year-old point guard who's past his prime. You look at
I'm not telling that point guard that though.
Well, I mean, by past his prime, I mean still has, he's 15 years younger than me. So, but I mean, he's still a very good point guard, Chris Paul, and he's still clearly exactly what that team needed.
Yeah, 100%.
And my point being that, in Atlanta has some guys that came in there, Lou Williams now. And we talked about this before, who's going to be the veteran on this team in a situation with a bunch of young guys that could probably use a veteran. Well, Kevin Love stays healthy, he can be that guy, because they don't have anybody else other than, unless you want to include Larry Nance Jr., who's still, fairly young guy, even though he's older than the rest of the starting lineup other than Love. He's 27, 28 years old. So that guy's going to be Kevin Love, and young teams that are able to grow can grow quicker when they have a veteran player out there who's been through the battles, who's in Kevin Love's case won a championship. So it's not surprising that he's doing that while healthy. It would be nice if he's able to get to the point where he can get, obviously, his numbers back up a little bit.
Yeah, and not surprised at his talent, just surprised at the impact I guess he had on the team. You feel like he'll kind of hover around the 25 kind of minute mark, or are they really going to let him play?
That's hard to tell. I think part of it's Kevin. As much as he's injured, been injured in the past, and as bad luck as he's had in the past, he gets worried about it. I don't think Kevin's saying, I only want to play 20 minutes. I don't think that's Kevin. I think that's the team, and that's, the wise choice. But there is clearly some concern with him in his own mind of, what's it going to be next? Is it going to be an Achilles? Is it going to be, and they have, the Cavs want him to get past that and just, don't worry about it. If something happens, it happens, but just play, don't play timid or play to avoid injury. And I think that's going to take him some time as he gets back. But I think at some point he'll be in the 30-minute range, as long as he keeps going like he's going, they'll increase his minutes for sure.
Well, let's just round out kind of the rest of the roster here. Jared Allen out with the concussion. How long do you see him coming back next week? Are they kind of shutting him down? Like what's the case here with Jared Allen?
Oh no, yeah, they definitely. Well, he has to go through the protocol.
But they're not rushing him back though, right? I mean, they're just kind of like.
No, they wouldn't rush him back, but they do want. I mean, it's not like a player that they think wait until next year. They do want him to play. They want him to get acclimated with Garland, Sexton.
I mean, Kevin Love. I mean,
Okoro, Love, and Nance when he comes back. They want him in there. It's not like a kind of thing like, well, you're an older veteran. We know what you can do. This is kind of a time for evaluation. They want him in there for that evaluation phase to get used to playing with Sexton and Garland. So they're not going to rush him back, but I would suspect he would be back soon if it was a concussion.
Cool. And Larry Nance has been out. That they say mystery illness.
That's. They say it's not a COVID related thing. I
hope everything's okay there.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate because it's hard to tell, but it sounds like he's had some issues keeping his food down and all that. So hopefully he'll turn the corner here soon. Yeah. Well, hey, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Kobe Altman and some of the heat he's been feeling the past couple weeks. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. We read one book a month and then we talk about it. Books like Stephen King's The Shining or Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you're on the hunt for book recommendations and enjoy sparkling conversation, come read along with us and then listen in.
All right, Reg, are you ready for podcast number 2 on the R&R podcast?
You know we are. Ready to go always.
Are we going to talk Indians and this dreadful baseball team that can't hit themselves out of a paper bag or what?
Will Major League Baseball let Jose Ramirez hit in all 9 spots of the order? Because if not, they still can't hit.
I don't think so. We'll get into that. And what about the Browns draft? Because that's going to be here before you know it.
Kenny, I got some guys on the defensive side of the football that I hope Andrew Berry has in mind because I think they could move right in as rooks and help this Browns defense.
All right, we'll get into the draft with the Browns, the Indians, and maybe even some Cavaliers, although not too much time on that. We don't want to waste your time, people. It's Reg-I, it's Rhoda on the next podcast. Don't miss it.
Want to hear more about your favorite TV shows and movies that are on countless streaming services?
Then listen to Up Next with your new favorite hosts, me, Kristen Aviles,
and me, Christina Walter.
Every other week, we'll highlight one genre, but 2 movies or TV shows, one old and one new.
We'll let you know what's hot and what's not from your favorite
or least favorite
streaming services.
And be sure to stay tuned to the end of each episode where we shout out an artist whose name you should know for their talent in the industry.
So follow us to stay up to date with your favorite hosts from Up Next,
a part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Powell, co-host of the Oranges, Oranger, Browns podcast. Check us out anywhere you listen to podcasts. For all your Browns coverage, post-game, pre-game, anything you need Browns, you'll find it here on the Oranges, Oranger, Browns podcast.
Hey, it's Tito, host of the Premier Fantasy Podcast. Get all the news and analysis you need to dominate your fantasy league. I've been doing this as long as anybody in the business. I can help give you the edge in your leagues. It's the Premier Fantasy Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey, it's JD from the Hyman Podcast. I created this podcast to have hard conversations. Conversations that make us human but are also wildly uncomfortable. Conversations that help give voice to the voiceless and to the marginalized. Now you can listen to the entire first season on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Consider this your personal invitation to join the conversation.
All right, Sam, we're back talking about the Cavs. They are in a position where they need to make a choice. Are they going to play for this play-in game, or are they going to be okay going for the lottery? How much say? So we're talking about Kobe Altman here. How much say does Kobe Altman have in that choice?
Probably 100%.
Okay.
I would say, yeah, that's probably him. You know, he probably knows how Dan Gilbert and ownership feels about what they want.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say this, for as much flack as Dan Gilbert takes, it seems like, from fans, in many instances, particularly these, he will let the basketball team make those calls, which he did, as I've said before on this podcast. The year they drafted Anthony Bennett, he wanted Victor Oladipo, and he told them, "This is the guy I want, but you guys take who you want." So had they only listened, had he only demanded that they take Victor Oladipo, but anyway,
oh man,
that's neither here nor there. But it's
So-
Kobe Altman. Kobe Altman's going to be the guy to decide. You know, obviously you're going to have injuries and all those things playing it too, but other than that, Kobe Altman's the guy who's going to make the decision.
Yeah, they're saying it's a 5-player draft. Sam, if you were Kobe Altman, what would you do the last, what do we have, 4-5 weeks?
Yeah, I go
They're
both
like
ways.
20
I go
games,
both-
I think, maybe.
Yeah, I go both ways. It's going to be, it would be a really hard fall for them to finish with one of the top 2 worst records. I don't even know that they can do it, you know, because of where they are. You know, Minnesota is probably going to have the worst record. I can't tell you who's going to be second, but teams like Washington and those guys are also going to be in play. So, you know, look, people have said Sam always anti-tanking and all this, and I'm like, I'm not anti-tanking. I don't know that it produces a whole lot or works a lot, because
Has
you
it
have
for
a young
us?
no. Well, you have a young roster, okay? Now, if you have a bunch of veterans that aren't going to be on the team next year, and you're gonna reshape the entire roster, then I'd say, yeah, absolutely, gut the roster and tank, go all out to tank. But when you tank, you're kind of selling the message to your players that it's okay to lose, and you don't really want them to ever believe that, and they don't want to play in that type of situation. Front offices tank.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Players and coaches do not. They won't do it. They don't want to do it. And they're not on board. I had a player once tell me, I'm not going to lose games so that they can go out and draft someone who plays my position.
Yeah.
You know? And so I get it. I get it from the front office standpoint, and it's not a terrible strategy, but you also don't want to turn into the Sacramento Kings, who haven't been in the playoffs in 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just kind of spinning your wheels in the lottery every year. You know, you have to get really, really lucky in the lottery to get immediate gratification, or even gratification of a potential superstar.
Yeah.
The New Orleans Pelicans got Zion Williamson. Well, and I think he's a fantastic player, and he's going to continue to be. They're every bit as bad as they were last year and 2 years ago when they got him. I mean, where are you going? You tanked. Where are you going? Guess where? Back to the lottery. It gets old, you know, and it's something that opposing like players notice, and they put a lot of stock in. I got traded to Cleveland. They're so okay with losing, you know. So there's that element of it.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, if you're the Cavs, you may not have an elite player on your roster, a guy who's going to be the elite guy on your roster. Like you always say, Chase, you got to have the best. More often than not, you have to have the best player on the floor to win, more often than not. They don't have that right now. Do they have somebody who can develop into that? Sure, I think so. I believe that Colin Sexton can be that guy and is some nights, and I believe Darius Garland can be that guy.
And Isaac Okoro, you forgot about him.
he would definitely be that guy in your mind, and who knows, maybe in reality.
Yeah.
But and Jared Allen. I mean,
Sure.
those guys all have that potential.
Yeah.
But this is I know Cavs fans dream of a Cade Cunningham or one of those guys from the G League. I don't know where Jalen Suggs, where are you going to put him if you draft him from Gonzaga? He's a point guard. So, I mean, I think that, and the Mobley kid from USC would be a nice piece because he's a power forward type. So, I think that there's some value in trying to play the lottery again. So I'm not completely writing it off, but I also think, you're making a big mistake if you're putting all your eggs in that basket. You're just making a huge mistake. If you think we can do this and we can get to a play-in game and still get a pretty good draft pick in this draft, which is supposed to be a deep draft, well, then that's something you consider, because you may put all your eggs in one basket and guess what? End up drafting 6th again or 7th, and then what do you do? Then
you play for the play-in game and you get lucky and get the 3rd pick, or that happened to the Lakers like a couple of years ago, I think.
Yeah. And look, I've said this before, Chase, you don't have to. The only way to get a top 3 pick is not to tank. You can also trade. Yeah. And it's happened. People trade top 3 picks. People trade, top 5 picks. It happens all the time. So you're going to have to give up something.
Yeah.
But, if you've come to the conclusion, hypothetically, which they have not, but if you come to the conclusion that, we found kind of our number 1 option and we really want Cade Cunningham, would the team drafting number 1 take, I don't think they would take Garland, but would they take a Sexton and you pair Garland with Cunningham? I don't know. I don't know that that's the answer. I'm just saying these are all hypothetical things.
Sure.
And I'll tell you what, these are things that they're going to be evaluating from now until the end of the season. And then whenever they find out where their lottery pick is, all this stuff's going to be taken into consideration. Do they feel, they obviously don't, nor should they feel like they're a finished product and that these are the only 4 guys they can possibly move forward with. And I mean, 4 and Allen, Garland, Sexton, and Okoro, and throw Larry Nance Jr. in there. So these aren't these may not be the guys that we're going to move forward with, but we hope it is. We don't know how confident we are in that yet.
Yeah. Explain to us the frustration that people have with Kobe Altman right now. Like 48 minutes kind of highlighted some of that. Sam, what's going on here?
Well, I think first of all, it's a good thing now that the Andre Drummond situation is resolved. That was weighing on guys. We talked about that. I think that I don't think that you can really question his picks. I think he's made pretty good picks where the Cavs were drafting. They just haven't had a lot of luck. They've moved back, 2 straight years. They moved back to the 5th pick.
And Garland, we'll see next year, see Okoro's development. I think it takes a little longer to gauge developmental players, unless you are impact like a Luka, I think Zion has made an impact, and not Luka's crater, but Luka is generational, so that's
you look okay. 2 years ago it was Zion and Morant, those for Memphis. Those are the 2 guys that you really wanted. Okay. Yep. Well, you didn't get either one. I wasn't real sure at the time why they took another 6-foot guard when they already had Sexton. And I'm still not positive that that's, the solution. But you look at the rest of the draft and it's like, okay, they potentially got, the best player at number 5. And that's really what you should do. I say that all the time, so I can't fault them. You take the best player available regardless of position. And they believe they did that with Darius Garland. And guess what?
You figure it out.
Based on the San Antonio game, maybe this is going to be something that he ends up looking like a steal at 5. So, okay, so I don't think you can fault his picks. The Kevin Porter Jr. situation was bad. That was bad. I don't know. Yes, he overreacted. It was handled poorly by the Cavs. It just was. And he handled it poorly too. But I think that they made a mistake there with that. They mishandled that situation. Andre Drummond's situation, I don't fault them for. They weren't going to get what they wanted. They didn't want to take on bad money. They knew that this was going to be the situation. He wouldn't agree to a contract extension. They were miles apart on that. You tried to trade him. Nobody else, you couldn't find a dance partner. They went to the dance. We're asking people to dance with them, and they got rejected. So they had no choice but to buy him out. I didn't like the idea of sitting him. I don't like this. And the players that I've talked to do not like the idea of, why do you keep sitting players? Why did you bench Kevin Porter Jr. for 2 weeks, to start the season, when, first of all, the charges against him over the summer were dropped. Now, look, if you want to suspend him for that trouble he got into, fine, do it for a game. But don't kind of leave him out there, and then he comes back, and then his locker's moved after a trade without telling him. He just kind of, it was just, that was bad. So I'm looking at this from a player's point of view, and everyone I've talked to, they weren't impressed with that, Kevin Porter, how that was handled. They weren't impressed with how Andre Drummond, why do the Cavs, the question I'm asked, why do they keep sitting players who are healthy and that want to play? Why do they, and if they don't want to play, then, I've never met an NBA player who said, yeah, I don't want to play. They're in the NBA. That's what they want to do.
Yeah.
So I just, that's got to end. That's got to end for him to be the general manager of the future. I think he's done an okay job otherwise. I know people are like, well, Coro did. No, come on, man. Give the kids some time. Give these other guys some time. I don't fault the draft picks. No. I don't fault some of these moves that he's made around the edges to try to improve the team. Sure. I don't. I think
Jared Allen was a great move, and
that was a great trade. He got him for nothing. Not to insult Dante Exum. I didn't mean it like that, but I'm just saying, you look at the value in what Jared Allen brings compared to Dante Exum, and even Prince, who plays well when he's healthy. So I agree think his moves have been okay. There's been some questionable handling of
internally some things.
Yeah, Kevin Porter Jr., which, I mean,
Dre Drum.
I hate to keep saying it, but the guy's exactly what they need.
Yeah.
Automatic offense off the bench, and just looks fantastic in Houston.
Another
shot,
nice athletic.
Game tonight. Yeah, he's fantastic. But
I agree with you in the draft. I think they've done as well as they could with what they've had. I think basketball, you can overthink it sometimes, and I don't know the speed and the strength of NBA. It's a different whole animal than the small time college ball that I played or whatever, Sam. I mean, geez. But so, you either play ball or you can't, and sometimes you get the best player you can, you figure it out, and maybe that's kind of like, well, hey, they saw Garland's ceiling and what he could do, and like, I know we have Sexton. They're different styles of player, and so yeah, I agree. I think a lot of the heat is coming from his lack of handling some of these internal situations, and then but I think I think the Bickerstaff was a great move and hire. I think that's been I've enjoyed that. I haven't had any qualms with Coach Bickerstaff. And so, yeah, I think it's just kind of like these personnel kind of issues that hopefully doesn't come around to say, well, I don't want to go there and, work with someone who treats players like that. That's where this can become an issue. And agents and players, they talk, it matters.
Yeah. And they get, it's funny to me because I'll see like people in my notifications on Twitter saying certain things about, how the Cavs need to tank and and players will see those things, not necessarily to me, but they'll see them and just be like, why is their fan base so willing to lose? And is that someplace I want? So, I mean, there's a very different thought process from what management fans have to what the players have. And you win in this league with players. You don't win with, you can have a great coach. You can have a Greg Popovich. Well, I mean, he's a very good coach. Don't get me wrong. But if you don't have the players and the roster, then look at Steve Kerr. I mean, he went from this guy who was, the next Red Auerbach to a guy who's may or may not get in the playoffs this year. Is he a worse coach because of it? No, he just doesn't have as much talent as he did. So you have to make concessions to the talent, and you do that in every industry.
The Spurs are 500 because of Pop, though. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
I feel like
they would be a much worse. The Miami, a lot of teams you could say that about with their good coaching counts for a lot. Don't get me wrong.
I would never get you wrong. I would never.
You would be the first to not get me wrong. But the point being that
right.
You take the best players you can, and you don't need to go overboard in making the players feel like, they're the second coming, but you do need to realize that it's important when you have talent to manage it properly, manage the men properly.
I think it's good to keep Kobe accountable for, how he's handled some situations. I think it's totally fine. I think it's nice to know that fans care. It's nice to know that people who cover the team care, and that, hey, like, this isn't what we want to see, how certain things be treated. So I think the heat he's taken, it's rightfully so. And I think the praise has been rightfully so too. So good job by you, Sam, doing an excellent job of.
There hasn't been much praise anymore for Kobe, and for the funny thing is he's probably
listening right now.
Well, that too, but he's probably, I mean, the guy that I would say before he became GM, he was assistant GM and held different roles in the front office. And I mean, he and I used to goof around and joke around and stuff all the time before games. So I've seen him come up through the ranks, and it's not always easy for me to, give an honest opinion on his job. I've never once and never will ever call for someone to be fired. Never.
Sure. No. Yeah.
Never would do that. But there are times where he'll make a move or something and do something. And I think, I part of my job is giving my opinion and being critical.
100%.
And I will have to be critical of a guy that really I've been, great. I wouldn't say great friends. We didn't go out to dinners and stuff, but we hung out in the arena a lot before he got that job. Now, of course, he hides from me, which is good. Good on his.
No, totally fair.
But
yeah, totally fair to highlight some of those botched handling of those situations. And I'm sure if he had
that everybody in that position knows that.
Yeah, that he would say, yeah, I could have handled that better. You're right. Well, Sam, I don't think we could have handled this episode any better, man. I think we just did an incredible job this might be our best episode ever of all time.
I would agree.
This is up there with the very best. Well, that does it.
Probably the LeBron trade deadline in 2018 when Kobe blew up the team was a great episode.
We
just
have,
by default. but this is up there.
Some of the finals episodes, we have some pretty very high volume download episodes.
Good.
It's been fun. It's been great.
When's our next finals podcast? When's that come?
2023.
Good enough. Good enough.
Well, we will come back a new episode next week, kind of getting more into the Cavs schedule and kind of like the grind of the season. But for this episode, that's it. Thank you so much for downloading and listening. Shouts to our presenting sponsor, Aligned Health Center. They are great. Check them out if you have any back pain, neck pain, and check out their all that they offer. They're the best. Incredible people there too. Shouts to the Press Play Podcast Network for making this possible. Sam, we just launched Red Guy and Rhoda last week.
I saw that. Yeah, they have a fancy graphic of their face. I don't get that.
No. We want to attract people, Sam. We want to attract people.
Right. I got you.
Yeah. No, we're launching the Dennis Maniloff show this week, which is exciting.
Yeah, as he gets a face too.
It is his. Right? It's not a cartoon. It's just his face. Yeah.
It's his head.
And his name. And his name on the show. Yeah. Well,
you try to keep the fact that I'm on this show as low key as possible.
That is not true. That is not true.
Rico's here. Let's keep it on the down low.
Gladly blast Mr. Amico.
No. This is good enough. I do enough to promote myself. It's nauseating anyway.
Well, hey, the press play is doing some work, and also, hey, we are hiring a summer intern, like a paid internship. So if you're interested, check us out on LinkedIn. We're going to be moving forward on that pretty soon, but paid internship, something we believe in. We don't like to paid internships. If you're interested in helping us out, check us out on LinkedIn. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Cavs on the Break. We always follow back. Follow Sam on Twitter at Amico Hoops. Catch all his work and writings at 48minutes.com and outkick.com. And for breaking news, insider info. Do not miss out. Sam, any final thoughts?
No, I guess, it'll be real interesting to see how things go with Darius Garland here, because I think that's going to be something to watch for the rest of the season. How does he assert himself? Will he continue to do it like he did against San Antonio? That'll be a huge storyline for the rest of the season.
I would love to see 3 more 30-point games.
Absolutely.
It'd be great. I'd also love to see you change that battery in that smoke detector.
I was thinking, you must think I'm so lazy.
We'll see what happens.
I have not. Probably by the draft, I'll have changed.
Oh, okay.
It.
All right. Well, that's
only because my wife hasn't heard it yet. But the minute she hears it, I'll have to change it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Well, Sam, always great talking to you, buddy. Mike Breen, take us out.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.